Greetings and salutations, travelers. Welcome to the Inn of Planar Crossroads. And as always, welcome back to our Around the Hearth discussions. This time, we are in ApocTober, and we last time discussed Choose Your Own Apocalypse, where we were talking about kind of picking a type of apocalypse you wanted to go with, kind of defining it a little bit, working around the ideas that you might work with there. This time, we're going to be talking about choosing when you want to have your game actually happen in that said type of setting. So, we're going to start in on that in just a minute. First, we got to do announcements. So, let me see. I'll start us off like I usually do so that everybody can think about what they want to say, and then we'll do Levi's Spotlight. So we will go with me, and then we'll do Squirrel and Okayest DM, and then Avenue Studios / Mustache. So, the Inn of Planar Crossroads can be found as far as links and all that type of stuff that we're doing on what we're doing on TheIoPC.com or innofplanarcrossroads.com. Both of those work, so if you want to check those out, you can. Those links to link to all of the different things we're doing with Rumble, YouTube, BitChute, Facebook, Twitter, blah 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 blah, all the stuffs. So, you can also learn how to support us there too, if you want to do that. We're trying to get to 100 subscribers per month, 100 bit of support per month. So if you want to work in on that, you can. It is, we're currently at like 17 or 20 at the moment. So we still got a ways to go. But once we get there, I'm working on getting us I'm entertaining the idea of doing metal dice as a giveaway. So, limited run metal dice. But we got to get to $100 per month of support. So, there you go.
Let's do it.
Yeah. I'm not committing to any programming being brought back like Lore Master, but that is the one that would be brought back next if we did bring one back. So, there you go. I think that's everything. Hope you've been enjoying the live things that we've been doing on our creation stuff with house specials. And I think that means we're to Skrat.
That's me. Yes, I am Skrat from Squirrel Plays over on YouTube, and I chit-chat about world building, character building, and things of that nature for making a fun and exciting story. And while the channel does tend to have a lot of focus on TTRPGs, it is not solely for that. It's whatever your preferred storytelling platform is. But I do also take a gander at lesser-known, smaller, kind of indie TTRPGs when I can. I'd like to do some more of that, and actually I will probably be taking a look at this feller to my left. I don't know what it is on your screen, but he's got one coming out pretty semi-soon. I'll let him say it, so that's all I got.
Oh, yeah.
Okie dokie then.
Hi. I'm Dennis. I run the Okayest DM YouTube channel where I make mistakes playing games so you don't have to. I am currently, like Skrat mentioned, designing my own TTRPG. It's called Sagas, which is an acronym for Setting and Genre Agnostic System. Most of the stuff I do on my channel right now is playtesting that in many different settings and genres, and I think today, for this segment, I'm going to be talking about a couple of them because we've run a couple different apocalypse scenarios in Sagas, and it's been fantastic every time.
Cool beans. What you got, Avenue?
Awesome. Dan from Avenue Studios, joined by Zechariah, and of course the great Mustache, here in town with us. God bless you for coming to New York. But we stream on Thursdays, the second and fourth Thursdays of the month for this collaboration with the Inn of Planar Crossroads. And on those streams at 7 p.m. Eastern, we build a one-shot and then play it using some of the concepts we discuss here on Around the Hearth. Of course, our supporters enter into a raffle to be a part of that game and that live stream. So if you join our forest, you can join us on those games. It's a lot of fun. And our other show, live streamed Wednesdays, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, AfterQuest. We've just started our Nobles campaign in 5th edition in the Waterdeep setting. So join us for that and check out all the other shorts and stuff that we do on YouTube, Rumble, and anywhere you find your podcasts. And Mustache?
And I'm Great Mustache, or JP. I happen to run Seventh Sphere, own it, and it is the proprietor of Open Legend RPG. So hopefully there'll be some new stuff coming out for it here. Well, I guess this year's wrapping up, so we'll see if it gets done before the end of this year, but for sure there'll be some stuff coming out in 2024.
All right. Okie dokie. Guess we're to Levi's spotlight now that the announcements are done.
And I am spotlighting the gelatinous rube. If you would like to be talked to by a gelatinous cube who gained sentience and wanted to be a cowboy, I guess.
I mean, who wouldn't? Who wouldn't?
I mean, depends on the vibe. I think I could, maybe for a week. But, talking, series I've watched a little bit of goes into how running more old school style games worked and could work now, and some tips and tricks for how to do that.
Alright. Cool beans. And with that finishing up, I believe we're done with our announcements. We're done with our shout out. Now, it's time to grab your preferred beverage. Sit with us around the hearth to join us as we discuss, when does the world end? Skål.
Skål. Ke naše družbe.
Madrug. Moj drug.
Moj drug.
Okie dokie. I'm going to start us off like I usually do with us getting some definitions and some ideas down off of my notes so that we can start to work off of those. So, with When Does the World End, we kind of started to allude to this very heavily last time. I had to wrangle these guys in to get them to stay focused. So,
We just got so
It's
excited.
really hard when there's an actual squirrel in the chat.
I know.
Yeah, what do you expect?
yeah, everybody's like, squirrel! It's like, there you go. Okie dokie.
Now that we know that there's vampire squirrels,
Yeah, I know.
Stop! You start with that. We're gonna
Bonus
get
content,
points.
right?
Sure,
No,
bonus
we
content.
talked about this question last time. Now I have to talk about the last question this time. It just makes sense.
There it is.
So, the big question is, what are you trying to do with your game? What type of game are you trying to play, basically? And when it comes to it, if you have Maslow's hierarchy of needs, depending on where you are in the apocalypse is going to determine what needs you are most imperatively meeting. Because are you down at the base where it's like, we are in the apocalypse, we are trying to actually survive, which can be fun. Food,
Shelter, water.
Food, shelter, water. You're surviving. So I like to break it into three
And rat away.
types. Well, because it's always going to be bugs in the apocalypse. But there's three, you can argue 4 types of apocalypse games. There's and these are my definitions. So pre-apocalypse, intro-apocalypse, and post-apocalypse. So pre-apocalypse obviously happens before the apocalypse is about to start. So you can kind of lead into it and go into a intro-apocalypse or intra-apocalypse where you're actually living through the zombies spread or something. And then post-apocalypse, it's afterwards. You're trying to do different things like rebuild society or different stuff like that. And so those all are going to be those 3 definitions are usually what you're going to be dealing with when somebody says, hey, I want to run or play a post-apocalyptic game or an apocalyptic game. And it's surprising that they'll probably start to describe it themselves by saying, I want to play in a post-apocalyptic game. They're already telling you what type they want to play. So you've already got that set. But if they say, I want to have like this apocalypse type of feel to the game, you can say, okay, all right. Session 0 it out and see where they want to play in the apocalypse. So I'm going to let you guys obviously have plenty of material to go with on this one, so I'm gonna let y'all run free on it. What you guys think?
I'm gonna be brave and bold and just take a stab here because my campaign actually fits into 2 of those categories right now. So I'm gonna use that chip to claim first. So I'm running a Star Wars RPG campaign, and my players are very much aware they're in a post-apocalyptic setting, and that they have encountered many planets and worlds in the Star Wars universe that have suffered apocalypses. One is Jabeam, where they got to see the Empire harvest a population for slaves, and then Base Delta Zero, which is just rain orbital bombardment onto the planet until there is nothing left. Another planet they went to had great powerful races, Boz Pity, and it was wiped out by giant war machine mechs from some forgotten civilization that just processed the population, and nothing ever came of it. There's just skulls and graveyards across the entire planet. A third one is some ancient technology ripped apart a planet and left it as this asteroid spiral around something that projected a black hole field. And the more and more the players were seeing this theme of many worlds that we're in that are touched by war become apocalyptic wastelands. And they get to go and do survival things, pick up survivors, pick up ancient technology, learn mysteries and secrets. It started to build this idea in their head. Are we facing an apocalypse impending in this campaign? I was not the first person, nor was one of my NPCs the first person in story to say, wait a minute, is our world threatened like this? And spoilers for any of my players that might be watching.
No one watches these.
Been warned. No, they already know. They already know. Like, there is a threat coming to their home world. Their home world thematically is going to be threatened by war makes corpses of us all. These things you've seen happening are just little pictures of what is going to happen to the Star Wars universe, which we know from like the Death Star and Alderaan that's a very real thing that's happening. But by communicating through the theme, your players are just so saturated with this awareness of impending apocalypse. They are preemptively, how do I protect our whole planet? We don't want any war here. We don't want the war machine to dig up our resources. We don't want big mega corporations that make the Star Destroyers and that make the TIE Fighters looking to build on our world, because this is the inevitable end. And they are treating it like they are staving off an apocalypse that they do not yet know where that actual threat is coming from. Just thematically and staging and the hints are saying it is coming to this world, and they're looking for where that threat is actually going to land from. So maybe you can use that. Look to the past apocalypse to project, to theme, and to set up what the future one your players are facing or trying to prevent might be.
Mm-hmm. I guess that brings the idea of
thing.
Yep.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just saying that I guess it brings the idea of the scale that you're working with, which we talked about last time, is a galactic one, meaning you can have this slow crawl apocalypse that seems inevitable, but isn't necessarily, because we've seen the movies. But it's one of those situations.
Spicy.
Hey, it's the Star Wars movies. If you haven't seen them by now, Luke blows up the Death Star V1, and then I'm just telling you that's what happens in New Hope. You can go watch it.
You ruined it for me.
Ruined it.
Yeah. That's one of the advantages of that world setting, is that because you're playing in a space sci-fi, you can have many planetary, full apocalyptic settings, and you have many planets at your disposal to destroy. And with things like the Empire there, you have a pervasive galactic-wide threat where nothing has to feel safe. Anything could be destroyed. Not everything will be, but anything could be. Is still a feeling of apocalypse because you have nowhere is safe. Not everyone can be trusted. And it's, you're fighting what is effectively a force of nature with how wide scale it is. So it conveys a lot of those things and makes for a good post-apocalyptic or impending apocalyptic setting on those local scales.
Well, and then you've got where it's like, it seems like it's post-apocalyptic, but it can still actually be intra, like still in the middle of it. Like if we look at one of the greatest pieces of media ever created, if we look at Battlefield Earth, you can see where you're seeing them survive after all the spoiler alert for anybody that's going to watch Battlefield Earth here soon.
No one needs spoiler alerts for Battlefield Earth.
No one's ever seen Battlefield Earth.
I went to the movie
needs
theater,
spoilers,
okay?
though.
I watched a lot of movies that I maybe didn't want to. but it is interesting because, the somehow, miraculously, the government figured out that these aliens wanted golds. They nuked all the gold reserves before they were able to get there, because they also found out that they're allergic to nuclear radiation or something.
I forgot the gold was a thing. There's so much gold out in the universe. They would never come here just for the gold. Such bad movie.
But anyways, it's interesting because you've got the, not looking at the movie itself, but some of the stuff in the movie, because you've got those people who have survived that, right? The nuclear stuff that happened. But the alien threat is still there trying to do stuff. So it almost feels like post-apocalyptic at first, but then it's also still actually intra-apocalyptic because it's still ongoing because they're still trying to harvest and then, destroy the population.
Right. And I think that Okayest DM had some stories from his Saga development, pulling from that post-apocalyptic stuff.
Actually, this first one's not from Sagas. I'm currently in a streamed Pathfinder campaign over on Mr. Swinter's Court on Twitch, where
sweet.
I actually get to play a character who... So before the campaign starts, like 30,000 years ago, there was a war where a deity was trying to wipe out or take over the world, and in response a different deity froze like a huge portion of the continent, just like in an instant, and my character was trapped inside that glacier and survived like Captain America style.
Nice.
And so it's been really, really fun to get to play that character, because now that that old god that was trying to take over the world is doing it again. We're just finding this out now in the story after like 30 sessions in. And it's really, really cool to be able to play that character who is this doom herald. Like, guys, I saw what happened before. It was terrifying, and we need to prevent this at all costs. So it is partially post-apocalyptic and pre-apocalyptic, which has been a really, really fun dynamic to play in, like as the character that has a connection to both.
Mm-hmm. Cool. That does bring up the idea that we touched on last time also, is that most of the settings that we are in are post-apocalyptic settings, but way distant. And so society has reestablished itself, and so we're on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we're up at the top again. But that doesn't mean that couldn't have had an apocalyptic type of event beforehand. So that's a nice duality to check on.
You get little warnings of the impending failure from the top of the tower, the heights that your society has reached. Maybe that's when it happened, especially if they've left, artifacts across the landscape or in treasure troves or locked away and sealed away ancient powers. You're just like, have we reached that point? Are we ready for the scales to be tipped back again? Always has a good foreboding wariness to the setting.
That's exactly what's happening. You're describing my game right now.
They're doing a good job then.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, she's an excellent GM.
Mm.
But sometimes you don't need the apocalypse to be a part of the story at all. Take the Fallout video game universe, for example. The apocalypse really doesn't have all that much influence on any of the main plot threads, at least in the ones that I've experienced. I've only played through 4 a couple times. But there's not a whole lot of mention of, the war and the bombs falling, except for, your character witnesses it at the beginning, and, you get that cool, I survived the apocalypse, now I'm here, now what? But in the story beats of the Brotherhood of Steel or the Institute, there's not really a whole lot of talk about what that apocalypse was. It's just a setting. Mm-hmm. It's not much more than that. And that is one thing that I did with a recent Saga's playtest is ever since when I started thinking about what would I ideally run if I created a setting and genre agnostic system, what would I want to do? And from a very early stage, I always wanted to run Pokemon, but post-apocalypse. So
post-Pokemon?
We called it PokePocalypse.
Well,
but yeah. But so we didn't actually explore the apocalypse at all. It was just, it's a nuclear winter, the end. That's it. That's just the setting. So, there's snow, it's cold. The explanation or the setup was that there were humans that bombed each other to smithereens, and them and all the Pokemon that they had on them at the time died. So there are no more humans. There are no more the Pokemon that were being carried that you always had on you. They're also gone. The only Pokemon that survived were the ones that got boxed forever. And now the box system is failing, and they're the ones that are emerging into this post-apocalyptic wasteland. And that was it. It was a really, really fun game, a really fun premise. I ended up ad-libbing most of it.
So a bunch of Ditto emerged from the boxes, and that's it.
Yeah.
I could just see Mr. Mime.
Masses of pink ooze.
Oh, that's so funny.
That's pretty fun.
But yeah, so the apocalypse doesn't necessarily have to be a plot beat. It can just be a setting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's true. It usually is in the post-apocalypse. It's more of a setting piece than it is anything else. The ones that you really get the most focus on the apocalypse itself is usually the pre or the interim. Because then there's something you can do about it. Otherwise, it just becomes, like you said, a piece of the setting. Skrat, did I remember you correctly? You saying you did a post-apocalyptic game thing?
It was just a little one-shot recently, but yeah.
All right. Was that in an established one, or did you make it up on the fly?
No, I just made it up a couple days beforehand to give them something to do. We were testing out. We were testing out the little system I was working on, and which we've been calling a squirrel system, and we cannot use that acronym for obvious reasons. If you think about it.
That's so good.
Or you could just let people run with it. This system is a squirrel system.
So, no, that's all. That was just a quick run thing to do. But it was, I think I said it in the last episode, it was kind of a Fallout type of thing. Like, world been over for a while. The idea was, hey, go loot, raid government buildings to try and figure out what happened, because nobody was really sure. And it had been happened a long time ago. Like, multiple generations had come and gone. So
Fair enough.
Well, I was going to throw to you, Skrat, too, because you talked about how you are as drawn to the Fallout post-apocalyptic. I mean, obviously, because games are enjoyed, but what would be the other things, looking at specifically when the world ends, how does that affect our games? And so we've talked a little about post-intra, post-pre combination. There's obviously going to be bleed over, I think, no matter what we do. But what do you think it is for that Fallout post-setting, rebuilding apocalypse after the apocalypse that attracts you and makes you enjoy that game?
Because I think there's just enough of the world left that there's familiarity there. It's like, okay, like I understand how guns work. I can pick those up, take them, and use them. Like, there's nothing new or crazy there. They might be slapped together in this world, but they still function the same and things like that.
Right.
You're not in a totally new universe, but at the same time, like, everything's kind of been flipped over. So that's what I was saying before. Like, hey, Fallout uses radiation. Like, there's children of the atom, and then there's all these weird mutated things like the death claws and whatnot. And there's a mixture there of, hey, radiation magic made everything weird, plus government had a lot of secrets going on. Like, I went down a big rabbit hole. I think in the Fallout universe, the government made the death claws. They weren't actually a mutation of the bombs falling stuff.
Yeah.
That does sound familiar.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, who doesn't like a good government secret thing to dive into, right? So you get a little bit of all of that. There's some familiar territory, but at the same time, like, okay, everything can still be new at the same time because, world blew up, changed everything. So.
Yeah, because I was thinking about, I think I tend towards the post-apocalyptic as well, naturally. I don't know if it's the certain era we're in where we're feeling that, or what it is that draws me to that. I'm curious about what you guys would think with the pre-apocalypse. I think that it's the story points, because depending on when you decide where you are in the apocalypse is gonna, like we had talked about a little bit last time of with pre or the true apocalypse and you're in it, it's about how do you live well until the end. So is it just the story points maybe that help determine that? Or what other things do you guys think would be important aspects in deciding that for the game? What time point we're having that apocalypse, or what things do you think, maybe the better question is what assumptions do you bring to the table? Because that's what the players are going to do. When you say this is apocalypse is coming, we're in the apocalypse, or we're after the apocalypse, there's going to be assumptions there that you're either going to want to press into or subvert.
I think a lot of people like to play in post-apocalyptic because having to live through something is not fun. Right?
That's
but having to survive it or overcome the results sounds
a little more heroic.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas having to explore those feelings can be hard for some people, right? And they might not want to. So I think that's why people default to post-apocalyptic or stopping the apocalypse, because you're doing heroic things then, right? You're overcoming something rather than just having to deal with the inevitable. And I think a lot of people don't want to deal with the inevitable.
My group totally wants the drama and the feels and would be so much happier if I were to say, like, we're going to go through, we want to live and suffer through the world, but we'll suffer together. More than just like, let's go conquer it afterward and stuff. But when you're looking at that, you're looking a lot at what do your zero player base want, and do they want to feel empowered? Then don't do it during the apocalypse. Do it afterward, where the world is your very broken oyster. That there is maybe a pearl left somewhere in all of that. If you want to feel that you're still, you've got the backing of something big and you're part of like a big system, like you're part of a military, part of a government, you're part of some secret agenda, then maybe do it a little bit before, where things still have some order, still have some power, and maybe you're part of the military, Navy SEAL kind of team or XCOM team that's going to try and save it. That can give you some backing if you want that be a part of something special. But if you want to be like, hey, we want to be a bunch of loners, we want to do our own thing, We don't want to have anything backing. We want to feel the autonomy of setting your own standards, building our own society, running our own life without any kind of rules. Do it afterward. Let them start being on the rebuilding team. It's about how you're giving your players agency to express themselves and to play at the world. That determines where you want to be in relationship to that.
You've got the Fifth Element versus Mad Max, right?
Yeah.
Right.
No, I just thought of something. The very first campaign I did, it was in the D&D world universe, but there was the big bad guy of the story was essentially this new type of magic that had been discovered, and it was very, very, very bad, and they were trying to shut it down and keep it all under wraps. So I guess technically that could fit, because it would have been the end of much.
That'd be a pre-apocalypse.
Yeah, they were racing against the clock in that one. Well, weren't really racing, but
that's an interesting point too. Is but the pre-apocalypse does have probably that sense of urgency. It does give you a time, which is always good in a game to have.
Yeah,
that.
they really.
If we hit this point, it's too late.
Yeah, I think there was like 7 people that had access to it, and about the 3rd or 4th one, they really realized, oh my goodness, this is bad. They realized the scale of it and how important it was. Like, okay, yeah, we gotta put a lid on this. It's getting worse each time we find somebody. So
nice.
Well, I mean, you could say, is this just affecting our world? Is this just affecting our type of magic, or is this affecting the entire weave of magic that sustains the entire multiverse? Then you got something big on your hands. It's like, in your pre-true apocalypse, if that goes through, type of thing.
I like that note that Dan said on urgency. If you want to have a game that has a direction and urgency, doing it before the apocalypse drives, because you got this end point that everyone has from the beginning that you're pushing toward. Whereas if you're in the apocalypse, the sense of urgency scales with what the need for survival. You have some downtime, not really so much urgency, but okay, the threat that's wiping out the world is at our doorstep. Now there is. So you could vary the level of urgency. Afterward, then there's almost no sense of urgency because the world has been through this. It's just rebuilding. Nobody has a job they have to get to. Nobody has deadlines. Nobody has parental expectations of when you're going to have, grandchildren. I mean, it's, you just live your life at the scale and pacing that you want to, and occasionally there's a threat for you to face.
I'll throw. I don't want to go too long, but you're bringing me. Would potentially the post-apocalyptic have more of a personal story aspect? Because the urgency you would probably derive from would have to be more unique to your player group. Because everything's broken down. There's not that societal structure that might be falling apart, so it would have more of a personal drive. I suppose it's not necessary, but it might lend itself better to that.
Yeah, what are you bringing into this new world from the life you left behind? What do you care so much about? Is it your poker game? Is it about your drinking night? Is it about, finding love? Is it about being top dog? What piece? Is it commerce? The current story I'm in right now, where I'm a player, we're doing 1300s historical roleplay right after the plague went through. My character's thing that he's brought through is I'm a traveling merchant. I go around spending and buying and trading because to me that is my sense of what I've brought through. See, every time I buy something from you with coin that shows that society isn't entirely gone, I know this doesn't mean anything. Take that coin for that food because that tells me and it tells you that the economy will come back. Some piece of what was before is still here.
I am going to venture out on a limb here, dangerously, and say that I actually disagree. I think that the... How dare I?
No, please do. Go on.
I know. You're in good company.
I would actually break it down. We've got our three times for the apocalypse to happen. I think that the post-apocalypse is going to be mostly for, and I think for most players, is not going to be a exploration of their own character and theme. It's going to be mostly an exploration of the new world, what is left, and discovery. I say this because I've been, for every single game I've run for the last year or so, I give my players a questionnaire, and I ask them what kinds of players they are, like, and by what they enjoy doing. So there's your crunchers who like calculating damage and whatnot. There's your role players who like making decisions in character. There's your actors who like talking in character. And the two most popular by a long shot are role player, enjoy making decision in character, and explorer, discovering new and relevant things about a world. So I think that a post-apocalyptic setting is going to be mostly about exploring that new place. I know it certainly is for Fallout. Is like you go to these new places and meet these new people. I mean, it's also just because that's how almost all RPG video games work. But the point still stands. Post-apocalypse is most of the time going to be about exploring the world more than it is about exploring your own character. I'm not saying that exploring your own character is a bad idea and you shouldn't do it. Absolutely. I think that would be awesome. But I think as far as popular opinion goes, most of the players are going to be focused on the world instead of themselves.
No, I think that's a really good point. And I think Zech and I might be slightly biased anecdotally because our groups of people are more toward the actor and role player things. Okay. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but
yeah, but and I also want to throw out there, like, I love the distinction between actor and role player because for me, I think I've always put those kind of as the same thing. Now that you've said that, those are totally different players, and now I have to go and rethink through a lot of people to do that categorization. But I totally agree with you as well. The exploration is a huge drive
because it's a meta aspect where the player and the character can be in the same position of discovering something new. Yeah, right. Because if the character's going in a new place,
as much overlap as you can between player and character usually is a good thing.
That's cool.
I don't know. I've been having to play bad guys a lot at Dan's stuff, so I'm the bad guy almost all the time in Dan's things, so
I feel bad, but then he is Mr. Cthulhu, so
yeah, I do.
Adam, you're the thing of my nightmares.
Wait, is that a character name?
Because I take that as a compliment. I take that as a compliment, Zach.
I meant it as such. Mr. Cthulhu.
Hello,
is
I'm Mr. Cthulhu. Nice to meet you.
Yes. Okie dokie. We are probably past our final thoughts time, so let's go ahead and get to those. We started. Let me see. This time we're going to start with Avenue, then Okayest DM, then a Squirrel Plays, and then Levi, and then me.
What do you think, gents?
My final thought is, of course, the greatest piece of media ever created. I mean, I think my final thought is I want to explore a little bit more pre and intra for myself because the things that I have explored is more post, right? So it might be interesting to try and do those other ones a little bit more. I mean, I think most of the media that we consume between games and novels and TV and all that sort of thing, a lot of it tends to gear more towards, especially in games, post-apocalyptic, right? Like when people, I think just in general, when people say apocalyptic, they think post-apocalyptic instead of the other things, and so I'd be a little bit more interested now after this discussion to explore pre or intra a little bit more.
All right.
I have a thought of just bouncing off of that too. Is I do wonder very much if it's culturally sort of the zeitgeist we're in with the post-apocalyptic, because so it might be and of course Adam does this every time, is recommending checking out media from different time periods to see what the zeitgeist was there, because I'm thinking like Cold War era, 1950s, that's kind of Twilight Zone. That's more a little apocalyptic. A lot of the Twilight Zones are very dark endings. With the ants, and stuff like that.
Well, just to clarify for you there, you guys are liking Fallout. Fallout was written by people who were raised in the Cold War.
Right.
That's why nuclear war was the deal, right? And it's just carried forward with us because it's in the zeitgeist.
Right.
But it wasn't necessarily... It wouldn't have been without that type of Cold War situation being.
Right. And then looking at media like specifically during that time to maybe get an influence potentially, because they have a different perspective because they're living it right then. It felt more apocalyptic to them at the time. We are now past that, where we saw the terror, lived through it, and yada yada. So I don't know. This is me brainstorming on the fly here, but like Adam always says, check out media too for influences if you want to experiment in the different zones, because they might have been at the time experiencing something, and the storytellers at that time are coming from something different than we could even know because we just haven't experienced it. And that might help you direct your style of play.
Yeah.
So building off that, I think then what we take away from this is maybe the right thing to do is what the Okayest GM has recommended, is survey your players, find out what they personally are afraid of, and make that the thing that ends the world.
There you go.
Rip and engage them.
That's not what I mean when I say talk to your players.
You sit them down and you say, "So, tell me your deepest fears and desires." You hate spiders. There is a swarm of spiders in this world. It is
Spider
coming
clowns.
for you. Spider clowns.
Spider clowns.
They are coming to end the world. They are alien spiders clowns. I don't know if you play killer clowns from outer space. I'd play that.
As would I.
All right, okay, SDM.
I think my takeaway is going to be very similar to Mustache, not opinions on media, whether they be good or bad. But that I think I need to expand more when my apocalypse is in the stories I tell. I've also done pretty much all post-apocalyptic stuff. You could argue that most D&D campaigns are going to be pre-apocalypse, because usually there's a bad guy trying to take over the world or destroy the world. Those are all going to be pre-apocalypse, technically, on a preventable apocalypse. But one I definitely want to look further into is interim apocalypse. And I've ever since seeing Critical Role's Calamity, that little 4-episode thing they did of how that apocalypse happened, I've wanted to do something similar where you'd get a bunch of high level people and do a mini series that is set during an apocalypse that has already happened in your game. Like, how did these people live through it? What caused it? And you get to unravel all of those mysteries while you have this existential fear of there's no way to get out of this. We just need to survive. It's not preventable anymore. That's definitely something storytelling-wise I want to explore now.
All right. What you got, Squirrel?
I got my gears turning for this one, so I'm going to turn that on.
Okay.
I love this one.
I can hear the music.
Yes, that's Interstellar, right?
Let's see. Y'all were talking about the pre and post, and in the middle there, I was going to ask y'all where Terminator technically takes place, if it was all three, but
all
we
of
didn't really
them,
have
right?
time for
Yes.
that one.
Well, which story?
LOL.
You know, because the first
first
Terminator
couple.
is pre, but it's not preventable. So
Well, anyway, what I'll actually touch on is what y'all were saying earlier about is the apocalypse. Is that the setting or is that a plot point? So I have been playing a game lately that's done a real good job of doing it kind of both ways. It throws you for a loop. Is anybody familiar with Days Gone?
I've heard of it.
Never played it.
Okay, so I got my hands on it somewhat recently, and then Starfield came out and ruined everything. But but it's really good. So it starts out. The opening cutscene is you, your buddy, and your wife, who is wounded. The world has gone to zombies are going everywhere. Everybody's nuts, trying to survive. It's total chaos, and you're trying to get to the top of a building to get to a helicopter to escape. And you get up there, guy says we're full, and then pull a gun on him and say, all right, you're going to at least take my wife because she's wounded, she needs help. And you stay with your buddy because he's also been wounded, but not near as bad as her. So the chopper takes her away, you stick with your buddy, and then it fades to black and says 2 years later. And everybody kind of has it figured out at this point. Like, you got all your different little factions. They know how the zombies work. They're like, okay, here, you stay out. Here, they're stronger at night. Weaker during the day. So if you got to clear something out, they've got a method. They've figured this out. And the game really focuses on you and your buddy. And your buddy, during your, hey, here's how you play the game, gets hurt. And you're on a time crunch, like right out the gate, trying to take care of him. So you get a lot of relationship there, and it really, 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 really focuses on the characters. And then a handful of hours into the game, one of those choppers comes back. And you're like, wait a minute, people are still alive? And they're there studying the zombies and stuff. And you start learning new things about zombies, and all of a sudden they become the plot point again. It's like it just uses them as a setting at first. Like, they're not that important. The characters are what's important. Trying to figure out whether or not your wife's made it or not. And then all of a sudden the zombies are a problem again. So it's been really good so far. Like, I thought it did a really good job. Like I said, then Starfield came out and ruined it. So
Just consumed your time.
It did. It's pretty good, though. I thought it did a decent job. Very anxious to see where it goes, but it was interesting to see how, all right, we can just use it as a backdrop almost, and then bring it back in out of left field, and now it's the center of the story, pushing things forward.
Yeah. And I guess that's a lesson that you can fluctuate that inside your own games.
Yep. You can trick your players, make them think the zombies are just gonna be there, or whatever the apocalypse is, and then all of a sudden, no, they're actually super important. I mean, I guess they always would be technically, but now they're more important.
They are going to try and eat your face. So
Yeah.
It's fine.
All right, Levi, what you got?
So I, interestingly enough, have not run much apocalyptic games myself. I would say that, at least personally, if I'm running an apocalyptic game, I would prefer pre or mid, because when I build games, I see scenes in my head that I want to play with. So if I start imagining an apocalypse, that's because I want to see my players in that. So that's more just like a personal stylistic note. Apocalypses are scary, so good horror game fodder.
Yeah.
Would
Okay.
more or less be the point.
Yep.
Again, like we're saying that the Okayest GM said, poll your players and then find out their deepest fears and then use it. So there you go.
I like how we're just giving that to Dennis. It's his now.
Yeah, that's what he
Well,
said.
you know, it's a good lesson.
That's what he said, yeah.
He was just right.
All right, I guess we're to me. So, for me, I want to encourage you to do a mental exercise when you're trying to decide if and when you're going to run an apocalyptic style game. Take the zombie apocalypse. It doesn't matter what type of apocalypse you actually want to run. It can be environmental, it can be alien impact, it can be all that type of stuff. Take the zombie apocalypse. It is a very easy one to say pre, interim, and post-apocalypse in. It is super, it's been done so many times that people have done it in all three ways. You can look at it and you can say, what are in good ones, not in the cheapo ones or anything, but in the good stories, you can see how that hierarchy of needs shows itself. And a little bit of pushback on the idea that post-apocalyptic is the most personal. It doesn't get much more personal than interim, where you're literally having to personally survive. So that's my idea of what a more personal one would be. If there's no you anymore, it's hard to be pretty personal. But the zombie apocalypse works excellent for fleshing that out in your own mind for when you're about to run a game, even if that's not the type of apocalypse that you're running. You just then say, okay, instead of zombies, I'm going to do a different kind of virus. Or instead of zombies, I'm going to do a kind of magical apocalypse where this type of magic something is sweeping across. And that can be very doomsday type of stuff. So all of these kind of can be substituted out once you've figured out how that apocalypse is usually responded to. Usually threat has to be identified. That's why it's easy to use zombies, because they're easy to spot, and then you see it. And a piece of media, whether you like it or not, I haven't watched really any of it, but I know story beats from it. The Walking Dead starts a very, very quickly a pre-apocalypse turned into a interim apocalypse. But now that interim apocalypse is being stretched out until it's becoming post-apocalyptic with the establishment of order and society. And humans are very, very, sentient beings are very, very driven to get back to an ordered society. They crave it once they've had it taken away, they want it back really fast. So that is, you can quickly turn into a post-apocalypse if the threat is not immediate. So that is my kind of idea on it. And I think that means that we appreciate you coming and sitting around the hearth with us. We hope you enjoyed our discussion. A little long this time, but hopefully worth it for you. And as always, have a great day. God bless and enjoy. Bye.
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 This content was made possible by travelers and viewers like you. Thank you.
Okay, y'all. Now it's bathroom break.
Sounds good. Yep. We're all old men. It's all good. Creaky crack. Yep. My burst is yelling at me. Oh, I forgot, JP. Feel free to get water. We have filtered water both outside and inside the fridge. Inside too.
You guys are just too hot.
I know.
Too hot to handle.
Just realized I have something. No, I just realized I had something great for the last one because I remembered a very unusual apocalyptic game that I ran. I had thought about it for years. I feel like at least. But it's some great insight on using the setting and using it for influencing the mechanics.
Oh, that's cool.
So
Yeah.
might have worked good in the second session if it was earlier on. I think one of the things that's come to light a little bit for me as I'm thinking through this is with the pre-apocalypse, where there's like impending apocalypse. Maybe more definition would have been warranted. Or what does it mean to be having an apocalyptic story where it's like truly headed that way? Like if it's just like, you know, bad guy's gonna take over the world. I don't know if that quite counts in my head as being apocalyptic if there isn't like a vision for how bad that is.